of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. This board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney. 551.072, discussing purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. 551.074, to discuss personnel or to hear complaints against personnel. The time is 5:33. The board will now reconvene in open session. The time is 6:41. On behalf of the trustees, I would like to welcome you to this evening's meeting of the Northeast Independent School Board. This is a business meeting of the board held in public. We appreciate your attendance and request your respectful attention. We welcome your comments during the matters from the floor section of the agenda. If you signed up to address a specific action item, you will be called at that time. Finally, I would like to remind you that it is the mission of Northeast to challenge and encourage each student to achieve and demonstrate academic excellence, technical skills, and responsible citizenship. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this. Oh, wait.
That's for later.
Sorry.
That'll-
Okay.
So, it's next item.
Next item.
5, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. A, Driscoll Middle School. Steve Zimmerman, Principal.
Madam Vice President, board members, Dr. Gottardy, and members of the executive staff, thank you for allowing Driscoll Middle School to be a part of tonight's meeting. I have with me two wonderful students from the Driscoll student body. Our invocation will be given tonight by Sophia Morgan. Sophia is an 8th grader who is involved in choir, theater arts, speech and debate, and is also a member of our National Junior Honor Society. Sophia will attend NEISD next school year. Accompanying Sophia tonight are her parents, Cynthia Cerna and Tony Morgan. Our pledges will be given by Michael Donahue. Michael is also an 8th grader who is involved in our video broadcasting class. Michael provides the Driscoll campus with our announcements on a daily basis. Michael will be attending MacArthur High School next year. Accompanying Michael tonight are his mother, Fern Donahue, his father, Peter Donahue, Aunt Melody Alvarado, and his brother, Carl Donahue.
Dear Lord, we ask humbly that you grant the leaders gathered today wisdom as they make decisions about the welfare of the Northeast Independent School District. Bless them, Lord, with the gift of understanding and open-mindedness as they hear the opinions and ideas of those present here today. Lord, we are especially thankful for the concerned members of the public who are in attendance today, and we ask that your blessings be upon them. Lastly, we pray for all teachers and administrators who dedicate themselves daily to imparting knowledge on the students of the district. May this meeting's outcome be in accordance with your will. Amen.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Please remain standing. You may be seated.
Thank you so much. If you would like to come up and take pictures, and Mrs. Perkins is going to give you certificates. thank you all for coming, and I'm sure you have tests to study for as we end the year, so you're welcome to leave. Or you can stay if you want.
We have to.
Do I say next item? Next item.
6, matters from executive session. A, personnel, including but not limited to administrative appointments pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. 1, possible action regarding routine personnel, including but not limited to administrative appointments.
No action.
2, introductions.
Dr. Gottardy.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Vice President, board members, ladies and gentlemen. Last board meeting, we hired a new executive director for Management Information Services, and it's my honor and privilege this evening to introduce Marcos Zarola. Marcos is joining the Northeast family as the Executive Director for Management Information Services. Prior to joining Northeast, Mr. Zarola started his career in education with San Antonio Independent School District in 1986 and served most recently as their Chief Information Officer. Mr. Zarola received his bachelor's degree in Computer and Information Systems in 1986 and earned his master's degree in Business Administration in 1997, both from Our Lady of the Lake University. Mr. Zarola has a total of 29 years in education. Welcome and congratulations, Marcos. And that concludes our introductions. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to Northeast. Next item.
B, possible action on the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property pursuant to Government Code Section 551.072.
No action.
C, possible action regarding consultation with board's attorney pursuant to Government Code Section 551.071. 1, possible and pending litigation.
No action.
7, recognitions. A, Student Volunteer of the Year.
Ms. Chancellor.
Good evening, Madam Vice President, board members, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, and guests. I'd like to actually call up our district volunteer coordinator, Brooke Pate, to address this item and tell you a little bit about this year's amazing volunteer.
Hi, good evening. On behalf of the volunteer program, I'm honored to present the NEISD Student Volunteer of the Year Award tonight. In April, each of our high schools nominated a Student Volunteer of the Year. The volunteer office reviewed each campus nomination, and the top 3 were interviewed. The individual district winner is selected not only for their contribution to the community, but also for their leadership they provide to their schools and to other students. The recipient of this year's NEISD Student Volunteer of the Year Award exemplifies our model of a 360 student. Audrey Hankins is a senior at MacArthur High School. She is a member of the National Honor Society, the Go Green Club, the American Sign Language Honor Society, and she's a leader in the Mac Teach program. Audrey has dedicated over 352 hours to her school and her community. To the different organizations she's involved with, she volunteers at her local library to help teach sign language on the weekends. She also spends a majority of her time volunteering for the Mac Teach program. Monday through Thursday before school, during lunch, and after school, she can be found tutoring students in the Mac Teach program. She assists students at Oak Grove in the motor lab, and also on Tuesdays and Thursdays, she can be found tutoring young girls that are in the Mac Teach Burmese refugee program. It is her personal belief that volunteering is the greatest thing you can do to benefit others and yourself. This young lady was such a joy to interview. She's such an amazing girl who's going to go on to UT in the fall, so she's excited about that. And it's my honor to introduce Audrey Hankins, this year's NEISD Volunteer of the Year.
Thank you so much and congratulations again. That's awesome. Next item,
B, Reagan High School girls soccer.
Ms. Funk.
Madam Vice President, members of the board, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, and guests. The athletic department wants to recognize Reagan girls soccer team, even though we are in the middle of baseball season and it's a whole different world, but we want to make sure that we recognize their great accomplishments for this year. If Coach Whitlock would come up. Frankie Whitlock began her coaching career. Hold on, ladies, one sec. Frankie Whitlock began her coaching career in 1984 at Judson High School, and then we stole her, and she went back to her alma mater, Churchill, in 1991. She opened Reagan in 1999, and she serves as the girls' assistant coordinator, the head girls' coach, soccer coach. She teaches English, and she is the graduation reader. This is Coach Whitlock's 31st year in education. Wow. She has had teams in the UIL regional tournament 19 times. She's coached 8 different teams to the state tournament, and she's been Coach of the Year 7 times by the Express and News. The ESPN high school soccer poll this year ranked Reagan in the top 50 teams of the nation this year. This was Reagan's 5th team to represent Northeast at the UIL state tournament. The Rattlers finished with a 21-3-2 record for the year, while they scored 86 goals, 16 shutouts, and they only gave up 13 goals or 13 points this season, which is what I thought was the impressive piece. Reagan was our district champion. They were the Region 4 champion. They finished postseason play, losing in the last 46 seconds to the number 1 team ranked in the state, Coppell. We don't care about them. So, I want to introduce to you a special group of young ladies led by an incredible senior class. They represent themselves, they represent their coaches, their school, their community, and definitely their district with integrity, passion, and a drive for excellence. They are your state semi-finalist Reagan Rattlers. Stepping out first is Lena Fernandez, defender, senior. Katie Labatt, defender, junior. Devin Hagan, midfielder, junior. Megan Sherman, defender, sophomore. Sam Bately, forward, 12th grade. Did I do that right? Is that right? Gabby Galon, midfielder, junior. Lauren Jackson, defender, junior. Hannah Harrington, defender, junior. Julia Thiel, midfielder, sophomore. Sarah Gates, midfielder, sophomore. Christy Gambuti, yay, midfielder, junior. Sophia Acevedo, forward, senior. Allie Lippincott, defender, junior. Isabella Santos, defender, junior. Nicole Galan, midfielder, senior. Sarah Grace Freeman, defender, senior. Tia Piercy, forward, junior. Taylor Olson, forward, sophomore. Kendall Moody, goalkeeper, junior. Krista Morovitz, goalkeeper, sophomore. Okay. Tyann Piercy, freshman. Kelsey Long, sophomore. Bethany Perez, sophomore. Gabby Olson, sophomore. Lauren Anderson, sophomore. Lydia Jones, sophomore. Megan Hawthorne, sophomore. Katie Miller, sophomore. And the last one I want to introduce is Kate McCollum. She played for Coach Whitlock at Judson High School. She's also started the program at Reagan and has had her own 15 district championships in a row with the JV. This is your state assembly finalist, Reagan High School. As pretty as they look is as tough as they played on the field. Nice job, guys. Nice job, guys. Nice job. Thanks. And Coach Whit. And you can let him back.
Congratulations. Awesome. Thank you. See everybody at graduation? Yes.
Oh, yes. Yes, congratulations.
Oh my gosh, how cool.
Many classes.
I had just written her a note, yeah.
Okay.
He came in, so I'm sneaking on it.
So do you want me to say next item or not yet?
Yeah, Marie's gonna, you wanna do it?
Should I do next item or not yet? 14, 13, 12,
11.
10, 9.
Got it made up.
Eight. What am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to say?
Madam Vice President, board members, ladies and gentlemen, we have a Boy Scout in the audience that I would love to introduce this evening. His name is Nelson James Bochart. He is a student at Madison High School, and he's studying his citizenship badge. Nelson, it's good to see you, and thank you for being with us this evening.
And you, my friend, don't get to leave early. Next item.
8 presentations. A, March and May 2015 bond refunding results.
Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Madam Vice President, members of the board, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, and guests. We want to show you a short little presentation on some of the refunding that we've done in the last few months, in the last few years. It's been great work with our financial advisors and our underwriters, and Brian Moy, our Executive Director of Finance and Accounting, is going to do the following presentation.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Madam Vice President, board members, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, and guests. We have gone through over the last few years, and you know by having to approve all of the orders, that we have done a flurry of transactions the last few years. Obviously, the economy has been at a point where taking and refinancing of debt is extremely advantageous. Just as many homeowners have refinanced their mortgages, we've done pretty much the same thing with our debt. Over $747 million worth of principal has been refunded over the last 3 years. But unlike your mortgage, you know, they're like, well, don't you have more debt than that? Why didn't you do it all? Well, because unlike your mortgage, there are restrictions, the calls on when we can refund some bonds. Normally, it's 10 years after the original bonds were issued that you can do a refunding. So there were 6 refunding transactions over I guess that's about 34 months. And prior to the one that we did in 2012, we hadn't done any since 2007. Why not? Well, these are interest rates. Back in 2007, there was nothing to refund to. Rates were really high. This yellow line here shows where the yield curves were when we first started doing our refunding transactions. And then moving on to 13, 14, and 15, you can see we've just stayed in a very attractive environment for doing refundings. Now, this is the Treasury yield curve. That's not exactly the rates we get. We're slightly, municipal bonds are slightly higher than that, but it will follow a similar trend. The scales will. Most recently, in March and in May, we did our last 2 refundings. And I say last because we're at a point now where there's not going to be a lot available left to be refunded for a while. We're going to remarket one of our variable rate bonds in July when it comes up for remarketing. But in terms of refunding traditional bonds, these last 2 transactions are it for a while. So the largest one of the entire set was March 25th. We refunded almost $360 million worth of bonds that were originally issued in 2007. The senior underwriter was Citigroup. Unfortunately, no one from Citigroup could make it today. They were trying to fly in, and the weather would not allow them. But of that $357 million on the debt payments before and after, we had a total reduction in debt payments of nearly $70 million. That has a present value savings of approximately $15 million, or 14% of refunded par. Now, what do those numbers mean? Okay, well, we have, instead of just showing what the total less payments are to taxpayers, we also want to show what the present value of that savings is, so that it's doing the PV kind of puts so you can compare transactions, puts it on a level playing field so that you're not showing a bunch of savings up front and then hiding some extra costs in the back. This brings it all down to a PV basis. And the 14% of refunded par is, I don't know if this is a technical term, but it's in the ridiculous range. It's in our policy that on an advance refunding, which is that we shouldn't consider doing the transaction until the percent PV of refunded par hits 4%, because that's what it used to be. I mean, I remember we had a transaction in 2007 where the PV savings was 5.5%, and we were jumping up and down. Look at how much higher than 4 we were. Well, we did 14 on this one. Another item of note is that we received 3 times the number of orders as we had available bonds. So we had people competing to buy our paper. And because of that, we're able to have them go against each other, and we were able to reduce the yields on several maturities. Another good thing is that we are starting to get several new major industrial investors that we've never had buy our bonds before. And out nationwide now, Northeast Paper is getting known. That will obviously help us if in next year, if the facility steering committee recommends to the board and you go ahead and call for an election and we have a bond sale next year, having more people who know us, know the quality paper that we have, that's only going to help any future deals. On May 7th, we did the last of the transactions we're going to do for a while, about $58 million of bonds from 2005 originally. Senior underwriter is RBC Capital Markets. From RBC today here is Dusty Trailer. And we had a total reduction of payments of $12 million. Present value of that $12 million was just under $10 million. 16.7% of refunded par. Now, when we sold the bonds in March, the ones with Citigroup, we had 3 times more orders than we had. This was a tough day in the market. The day before, the economic indicators that had come out made people shy away from wanting to put money in the bond market. So we achieved the savings that we went out for, but we did it with actually being short on sales. But 2 things the underwriters do. A, they go out and they sell all your bonds for you. B, if you run into a day like this, they underwrite those bonds. They get underneath them. And RBC stepped up to the plate and underwrote $15 million of the bonds, or approximately 30% of the new principal. So I mean, we've had a lot of success with the senior underwriters that we've had in the last few transactions. So on one hand, it worked really well. They were out there and they pushed it all and they got it all sold and worked it that way. And on this side, they got under. I mean, two different transactions. We couldn't be happier with both. So here's the big numbers of the last 6 transactions that we've done since 2012. In total, gross reduction in payments that we're going to have to levy INS taxes for. So this is the savings to taxpayers over about the next 24 years, over $137 million. That has a PV savings of, or it did at each one of these transaction dates, of about $103 million. So in total, it was about 14% of the refunded par. It was the savings. And again, you know, there were times when we were looking at 3, 4, 5% savings and considering doing those transactions. There will come a day when this market will end and we'll go back to where we were, but we're just so lucky that we had the opportunity to take advantage as much as we were, and were able to bring down and refinance over $747 million worth of our bonds. So, all right, at this point, that's all I wanted to show. We have representatives from, I already introduced you to Dusty from RBC. Again, Citigroup wasn't able to make it. We have Michelle Aragon from First Southwest Company, our financial advisor, and Ricardo Villaseñor from Cabrera Capital Markets, our co-FA. And at this point, I am available for questions, and any of the representatives are available for questions.
Do any board members have questions? Yeah, we're very thankful.
Thank you. Thank you
Standing
very much.
ovation.
Impressive, impressive.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your time. Next item.
9, new business for possible board action. A, board business. 1, possible action regarding 2015 TASB advocacy resolution.
And that's me. As the regular legislative session comes to a close, TASB asks Texas school districts to propose advocacy resolutions addressing newly emerging issues or revising previously adopted positions to reflect legislative outcomes. Proposed refinements will be submitted to the TASB board, and the 2015 Delegate Assembly will adopt approved resolutions that will amend the 2014 to 2016 advocacy agenda. We did submit a resolution last year, and I quote, "TASB supports criminal background checks for school board candidates and the right to refuse candidates based on criminal history records," end quote. Since this isn't due to TASB until July 1st, we can table this item until our next meeting in June to allow us time to think about if there's anything that we want to submit, or we can discuss it now and make comments. Anybody have anything they want to say?
Well, I think with everything that's going on in Austin right now, there seems to be a lot of things that we probably need to be keeping an eye out for. This session in particular has been very adversarial when it comes to public ed. And in fact, trustees have been targeted specifically in many, many ways. Actually, even TASB has been may go away in governmental relations. As a district, as a large district, we don't use a lot of the TASB services. They have a whole book of services that they provide, but the main thing that we use is their advocacy. And there's actually a bill that has some legs that will say that that basically they could no longer advocate. They would, and nor could we if we expected to be reimbursed for any expenses. So there's a lot of things going on that I think we really need to keep an eye on. If you're not familiar where the resolutions go, this is last year's delegate assembly book, and this is the big long meeting that we have on Saturday at convention, and it is several hours long, and it's a lot of the whole back section here is resolutions that have come from other districts. We base our basic advocacy on our cornerstone principles, and those are just kind of the meat and potatoes of what we do. You know, that we want excellence in student achievement, that locally elected trustees and locally governed public schools, rigorous accountability, and so on and so on and so on. And then from there we have priorities that are, that's a full page long. And then we have all of these resolutions, and it's about 10 pages front and back there of resolutions that have come from individual districts. So things that affect us directly as a district that we might want to bring, like this thing with that we tried to bring up last year. Although it was not accepted as a resolution, there's no reason that we can't represent that. And actually, I'd even had some comments in some of my meetings this year from other boards saying, didn't you bring that up, and why wasn't it accepted? And we'd like to bring it up because we're having the same issue. So that we could always bring that back up again for resubmission too. But there's just so many things that we probably need to be keeping an eye on that may affect us as a district that may not affect others. So that's kind of where that is.
So do I have a motion to table this until the June?
Postpone. We want to postpone.
Okay, postpone it until the June regular meeting?
So moved.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wheat. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Wolff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. Next item.
B, resolutions. 1, possible action regarding resolution for changes in STAR testing.
Okay, and that's me again, but I'm going to ask Ms. Hughey to speak to this because she actually brought this to our attention.
All right. This actually came from a friend of mine who's on the Katy ISD board, and as you know, we've passed resolutions in the past that we certainly do not support all the extensive overkill of testing that goes on. This resolution, though, is aimed more specifically at STAR, and there's a couple. I mean, it is a long resolution, but I think it said so many very important things. And for those of you out there who haven't seen it, it says, whereas Northeast Independent School District is one of the largest districts in the state and is also among the top performing school districts in the state, it points out that we must adhere to the federal testing and through No Child Left Behind. And we have no way to opt out as parents, as trustees, to any testing now, period, none. So this is just kind of saying that we certainly believe in accountability. We do not agree with the high impact of the STAR test on some of our students. but that we definitely do not have a problem with diagnostic testing. So it's pointing out the things that instructional time is often compromised to prepare students for testing. So it's just kind of rolling all the points that we've been talking about so much in the last few months about testing. You know, there's a mom group that has done great work at getting the EOCs reduced from 15 to 5. So this is just kind of letting the legislature know that we not only support that, but elimination of a lot of the mandatory testing that does our students absolutely no good. So that's been it.
And Sandi, let me jump in real quick.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
You know, by the resolution that we're talking about here, we're not talking about taking away accountability in any way.
Right. That's
Okay, and let's be clear on that.
really strong.
Okay, that accountability is part of the resolution, that accountability, wherever it comes from, is something that we endorse, is something that we hope for, and that we would not want to let go of.
Right.
What we're asking for is that the tests that we have out there are tests that are not connected to funding, that are not connected to graduations, and that we make sure that there's something so that if a district is not doing well, for instance, if we're not doing well, we want some accountability. We want to know that.
Absolutely.
And we want to hear that. What we don't want is we don't want our students to be held to the standard, that we don't want our funding to be held to the standard, and that this is what the resolution is about.
You said it so much better than I did. You're right. We don't need to be crippled by these tests. We are proud of our students, and we know that they're doing great. We know our teachers are doing the absolute best. And I'm not going to get a little political on who's getting all the money on these tests. We won't go there.
Well, we're not going to get political. We want testing. We want accountability.
Not a problem.
We want to know where our students are, but we don't want it to clog up the system the way it has.
I would like to hear maybe some feedback from our Associate Superintendent of Instruction, Ms. Hawkins. Could you give us your assessment of this?
I agree with exactly what Mr. Wheat just said. We need to be held accountable. We need to be sure we're preparing our students for post-high school, for college, for careers. We should not hold one little snapshot, a 4-hour test. That is the judgment if a child did well, if a teacher did well. There's more to accountability in that. I believe our superintendent can hold us accountable. I believe it's our job as professional educators to come in and do what's right, to teach the state curriculum, which is required to the very best of our ability, and to be sure that we are preparing kids. I noticed in this, the resolution states that we should align with federal accountability, which I believe is the reading and the math for accountability, and then the science test. The
Right.
resolution agrees with that. I think that's appropriate. We've added some more. But there comes a point where if you're not careful, we're a district that teaches to a test, we're a state that teaches to a test, we're a nation that teaches to a test instead of preparing kids for college and career readiness. So I think the resolution is well put.
And in your estimation, Ms. Hawkins, how much time do our teachers spend preparing for this test within their?
Well,
I know that's a heavily weighted question.
It is, and every classroom is different.
Yeah.
We have many teachers who don't teach a tested area at all, right?
Right.
And they get along quite well. We have students who come to school the very first day and are prepared to set and pass a test. We have other students who come without academic vocabulary, and we must teach the state TEKS. That's our job, and I think the teachers do that every day very well. But there does come a point, and I get very nervous. We want those results to look very good. We're going to be out there in the paper compared to others. So we, as a division of instruction, we push in and we help with intervention, and we help kids get across the line and do well on the test. So I don't think I can answer that exactly, but I think in some cases it's too much, in others it's not. The kids and the teachers, just by naturally teaching the state standards, do very well.
My question comes from an area of concern that we are sacrificing adherence to the TEKS for this test.
You can But you also have, think of the social studies TEKS. There are I think there's 186 U.S. history TEKS, and I might be wrong on that. It's, but how do you teach anything with depth and with critical thinking and with problem solving and with relevance to the students? You're just covering material to make sure somewhere along the line you've hit what the kids will be tested over, and that's probably not the best instructional model.
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Hawkins.
Thank you. Any other comments?
The other part, too, that following up with what Ms. Hawkins was saying is Texas has historically required more state-mandated high-stakes tests for high school graduation than any other state. And there's not been a measurable improvement in college readiness as a result of these tests. But diagnostics is what is, that's where our students get the help. So I strongly agree about the accountability. If nothing else, our parents will hold us accountable. But I've always taken great pride in the fact that our district is accountable. We see our children as children, not as a bubbled-in test. And what's been done to some of our children in the past couple of years has been heartbreaking.
So do I have a motion to approve the attached resolution?
I would love to make this motion.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wolff. A second?
I was going to read it if you don't mind. I move that we approve a resolution that calls for the elimination of high-stakes testing, which includes those assessments that are required for graduation.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Next item.
Thank you to all of you. I appreciate it. 2, possible action regarding resolution for SB 149.
Ms. Hawkins.
Thank you, Vice President Grona, board members, and Dr. Gottardy. Moving right along with testing, Senate Bill 149 was signed by the governor today, and we are bringing you a resolution that goes along with Senate Bill 149, and I'd like to turn the presentation over to Colleen Borman, our Executive Director for Curriculum Compliance.
Thank you. We are asking for your approval for a resolution concerning IGCs or individual graduation committees, and we're so thrilled. The timing couldn't have been perfect. The governor signed off today. We have been working on this project for quite some time, and I would be remiss if I didn't say who our helpers have been. But Joy Culpepper, Director of Guidance Services, is here. She's going to drive the car for us this evening. But we also had so much support from school improvement, data processing, testing services, Gary Hardcastle. So a lot of people put a lot of work into this, and so we're pleased to present this to you. Deb Caldwell, yes, she was always letting us know the latest. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of background information. Like Janice said, the 84th Texas legislature enacted 149, SB 149, which created the Individual Graduation Committee. And the governor signed it into law today, which was so very, very important. The timing of this is just critical. So the purpose of the IGC is to provide an alternative method for satisfying certain high school graduation requirements for students who failed not more than 2 end-of-course assessments. The student must have met all high school course graduation requirements to be considered for graduation by the IGC. This slide, go back one for me, Joy. This slide is kind of the who. Who is that kid? Let me describe that kid to you. That's the kid that took 15 EOCs. That's the kid that the EOC had to be added to their average. This is the child, when you pull a transcript, that's taken that test 3 times. This is the student that went to EOC prep, summer school. This is the student that took practical writing as an additional way to learn the TEKS. This is the student that took some other coursework that prepared them to try to take that test again. This is the student that got just a couple more points on the EOC every time they took it, but couldn't quite get it. This is the child. We have 136 of them right now, without test results coming back. We took it last week, so we know our number is going to go down. So just wanted to kind of paint that picture for you. So what's happening? A committee will meet And we'll review all relevant student data to determine, and this is the key, to determine if the student shows sufficient understanding of the knowledge and skills taught and tested in that subject area. I love what Janice said. It's more than just a snapshot of that day. The committee will review all relevant academic data points, and they must decide once they review that and make a decision. But they have to review all the data points. The data points meaning, what are your course grades? If you took Algebra 1, how did you do? Did you cycle back around and take Algebra 2? How were your grades? How were your EOC tests? Did you take a pre-AP class? Did you take an AP class? Did you take remediation courses, remediation programs? How was your SAT, PSAT? So we really get to look at those kiddos and say, do they know these TEKS? And you know, when you talk to the deans at MacArthur High School, or we met with all the high school principals, and you give them the list, they look at you and they say, that kid's in my class. We set them up. We created that schedule to help that kid be successful. So we'll get to look at all that data before a decision is made. Once the committee reviews the information, they're going to make a decision, and it must be unanimous. The decision's final, and it can't be appealed. If the IGC has determined the student's qualified to graduate, then the student will have the opportunity to participate in the graduation ceremony. So let's take a look at the timeline, and then this will help you understand why we were cheering in the streets today, probably the whole state of Texas, that the governor finally signed, because we've been kind of waiting on this one. In March, we administered the EOCs, and in May we did as well. And then tonight, we're here in front of you asking for approval for a resolution. We're going to receive that last round of EOC results May 22nd. So next week. I think that's next week. Friday. Starting on May 22nd, our goal is to notify the parents. All of our documents are ready. They're prepared. They're in Spanish and English, ready to go. May 26th, we hope to start convening the IGC meetings and start making some decisions for those kids, because we know January 4th is the first graduation. Now, some of you may say, why are you here, Ms. Borman? Why are we bringing this resolution here to you all tonight? The commissioner weighs in 2015-16. So each school district is on their own for this short period of time to talk to their board, to talk to their superintendent about, what kind of policies and procedures we'd like to put in place. They have attached in the bill, you'll see that we must report it to the PEAM system. So December 1st, we'll be reporting those students who, we're not quite sure what we're going to be reporting, but we'll be reporting whether they've had an IGC or were graduated by an IGC. And then the key one at the bottom there is September 1st, 2017. This bill is only for those group of children that were caught in that 15 EOCs. It's not for every student. It's for that group of kids that the legislatures, I believe, sometime they may have looked back and said, oops, maybe that wasn't the best decision for our kiddos. And so it expires September 1st, 2017. So what we're asking tonight to do is we're asking for your approval to approve the resolution to implement Senate Bill 149. Do you have any questions?
I have a question. Ms. Borman, if they graduate with the IGC, and their diploma is no different from any other student?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
It will note on their transcript under their testing, it will note IGC, but their diploma, their plan has not been changed.
And do we anticipate what kind of effect that might have with college acceptances?
That's a great question. I may defer
'Cause I'm
to
concerned
Joy.
Yeah.
At this point, we really don't know how the colleges are going to respond.
Okay.
We don't know.
But if I could weigh in, I'm not terribly worried about that.
Okay.
I think that each college looks at the transcript individually, and depending what type of institution you're going to and what field or major or college within the university, if your grades are there and these students have all earned their credits, passed, like if they failed the EOC for English 1, they've passed English 2, English 3, English 4. So I don't think that single factor will have that big of a negative effect. Some of these students may have struggled in school. That in itself may show on the transcript, and that struggle will probably be a more determining factor than this one test.
Okay,
In
thank
my
you.
opinion.
Okay. Anybody else have questions?
Just very briefly, Ed, did you want to say
Go
something?
ahead, go ahead.
How quickly do you think we can get our teams together and ready to go and ready to approve some people?
We met last week with our principals, our guidance counselors, our academic deans, and we're ready to roll it out. We're just waiting for the test results from the May EOC, and so we'll receive them about May 22nd. So we're hoping to have meetings start possibly May 26th.
Okay. Who chooses who's on the committee?
The state designates who's on the committee, and the committee members are required by law, the principal, teacher of relevant course, department chair, parent, and student is optional unless they're 18. And an LPAC rep is if required, or and a translator if applicable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have,
Okay.
Madam Chair, I have two questions. One has to do with the number of students that we have from previous years that are that this will benefit, and also this will not help the ones that might not meet the graduation requirement for this year.
You are correct. One of the criteria is that the student must have passed all of their coursework, high school coursework. So there are some students that do not qualify for this plan. Did I answer that?
Do we have an idea if we have students from previous years that this will help?
You know what? That was part of the Senate Bill 1 during some of the readings, and in the last part of the readings, it was pulled out. And so it will not affect students that have already graduated.
Right.
We will not be able to go back and pick up those students, no.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, do I have a motion?
I move that we delegate the superintendent the authority to develop and implement procedures to meet the mandates of Section 28.0258 of the Texas Education Code. Am I the right one? Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item.
3, possible action regarding resolution for Jim Streety.
Dr. Newman.
Vice President Grona, members of the board, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, I would like to ask Ms. Karen Funk, our Executive Director for Athletics, to address this resolution.
Coach Jim Streety spent 23 years coaching at Madison High School as the head football coach and the athletic coordinator. His record was incredible with 194 wins and 66 losses and 2 ties. During his tenure at Madison, Coach Streety was known as the player's coach, and that is a true statement. And he was always made a habit of taking care of the Madison athletes. Jim Streety brought a positive recognition to Madison High School, the community, and to Northeast ISD with his professionalism and with coaching reputation, having been teams that were a class act. Coach Streety's was inducted into the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame on Saturday night at Baylor Center in Waco, Texas. His legendary coaching career at Madison was left an indelible mark on our community. It is suggested to pass a resolution for the athletic department to purchase a half a page ad in the banquet program honoring Coach Streety, his time spent in Northeast, and the tremendous impact he had. We are not able to purchase for an individual, and so we needed a resolution to be passed. So we are asking that we say that we pass a resolution that we could purchase the ad for Coach Streety.
Does anyone have any comments? Yes, very well deserved. Do I have a motion?
I absolutely move that we do that.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins.
Second.
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you, Ms. Funk. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Next item.
C, Board Policy. 1, possible action regarding Board Policies DGBA Local, DGBA Exhibits, FNG Local, and GF Local, second reading.
Dr. Newman.
I believe we have comments, matters from the floor on those.
Sorry.
Present first, though. Did they want to present
Okay.
first?
Do you want to present first, or do you want to hear the comments?
That's up to you, Madam Vice President.
Madam Vice President, no.
Comments?
We could hear the comments first.
Okay, comments first. Thank you.
All right, you need to read the deal and tell them it's 3 minutes.
Thank you all for being patient with me.
You're doing good.
All right. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this time of the meeting. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As explained fully in the board's written procedures for this time, matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related to district business for up to 5 minutes, but are not permitted to make personal comments about an individual staff or board member that should be raised using the district's grievance policies. 2, a personnel action. 3, a student disciplinary matter. 4, a complaint about a particular student. 5, or pending litigation. Any person who persists in speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. We also welcome comments at any time, either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail, care of the Superintendent's Office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas, 78217. And you have 3 minutes because it's speaking to an item on the agenda. So,
Selena Valdez.
Hi, good evening. My name is Selena Valdez. My address is 9033 Arrow. Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, and guests. So the Northeast ISD current DGBA local policy states that the board encourages employees to discuss their concerns and complaints through informal conferences with their supervisor, and that concerns should be expressed as soon as possible to allow early resolution at the lowest possible administrative level. The proposed language change to this policy will greatly impact and confuse timeline rights for Northeast employees. The new provision stating that the district will make the reasonable attempts to schedule conferences at a mutually agreeable time is very concerning, because if the complainant fails to appear, then the district can hold the conference without that person there. And what we're really concerned about is, of course, contacting, the employee who's going to be involved in that complaint. If it's mailed out, obviously they may not get that letter in the mail, and they would end up missing that conference that's set up for them, as well as having their supervisor. It says in your policy change that the direct supervisor may not inform them intentionally, and that's very concerning, because we definitely want to make sure that everybody has the information, as to where to go through with the timeline. So again, the proposed language change states that the grievance clock starts before any informal attempt is made to resolve concerns and not after. If this policy does pass, we are going to have to encourage, and we are going to have to educate, the Northeast Education Association members that the grievance would have to be the first avenue taken to solve any potential conflict. And that's definitely not what we want to do. We want to continue working together, continue growing and building our relationship, and working with everyone. So we just appreciate if y'all, again, are not going to support or pass this policy. Thank you.
thank you.
Tom Cummins.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Gottardy, and staff. My name is Tom Cummins, and I'm speaking for the Northeast AFT. Ms. Selena Valdez just spoke to you on DGBA, and on behalf of AFT, we support the Northeast Education Association stand on that. Everything that Ms. Valdez said, we agree with. I would like to elaborate on some other concerns, that of reducing it from 15 to 10 days. It becomes much more likely that it will be a formal grievance rather than an attempt to resolve it informally and collegially. There is a lot of emotion when somebody has a grievance or a concern. 15 days allows for emotions to subside, and so we greatly encourage you to restore that to 15 days. One other problem is the policy states that if it's not filed with the appropriate person, then the grievance can expire and there's no requirement on the district administrator to forward it to the proper person to be heard. We would like to see that in there. There's, with the number of exclusions and exceptions that you have in this proposed policy, as well as in the other one, it becomes confusing at times, and we have filed in what became the wrong place, and it was simply forwarded to the right person. That sort of courtesy, I think, goes a long way to helping resolve problems. And if it's not resolved that way, then other avenues have to be taken, some of them outside the school district, which we certainly don't encourage and don't want to have to go down that route. So we would appreciate if you would make those revisions to the policy. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Dr. Newman?
Thank you, Vice President Grona. We ask that the Board of Trustees approve the second reading of attached board policies DGBA, FNG, and GF as submitted. I do have Mr. Joel Trevino, Executive Director for Human Resources, and Ann McNabb, our Executive Director for Student Support Services, available to answer any questions you might have.
Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the second reading of the attached board policies DGBA local, FNG local, and GF local as submitted?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Could we have?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We can also have discussion at this time, right?
Okay, sorry.
Okay. What I'm concerned, the two people that, the points that they made, maybe the administration or the Human Resource Director might address that issue.
Mr. Trevino?
Is there anything? Good evening.
Good evening.
Is there anything in particular you want me to go over?
Well, for instance, they seem to think that 15 days is too much, and I'm sure we've spoken with our attorney and what have you while we were making these changes, and I would just like to see if you feel that the 10 days will actually be sufficient, and if there's any reason why it shouldn't.
I believe that in my opinion, that the 10 days is sufficient time. These are 10 business days from the incident that triggers this grievance. That's 2 full weeks where the employee has to decide whether or not to file a grievance. That begins the process. Then from that, we still have to schedule the hearing for level 1. That doesn't mean that during that time, during the first 10 days and the subsequent 10 days, that an informal conference can take place and the supervisor and the employee can discuss trying to come with a resolution that is agreeable to both parties. We encourage that. We encourage the informal process. Believe me, that we believe in that in the Human Resource Department, that we ourselves have become part of that informal process and have become kind of like mediators to see if we can come up with informal resolution. So in summing up, yes, 10 days we believe is sufficient time. Again, that doesn't mean that if the grievance has been filed, that they cannot meet informally. They can still meet informally and come up with some resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Trevino, go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. I'm glad you're up here. Couple of other points that there was questions about was the ability to forward the grievance or to forward the issue if it had expired. Would that be forwarded on without notice?
Forwarded if it was expired.
Right. Well, I mean, if there was a point that
It went to the wrong place.
right,
if it
if
went
it was
to the wrong
filed with the
place.
wrong place,
Oh.
that we would do our due diligence to make sure that it was filed correctly.
Yes.
Then,
Well, we're
because
very,
that was a change in the language.
yes, we're being very prescriptive in both DGBA and FNG as to who we need to go to.
Okay,
We
good.
do say that for level 1, it must go to the administrator, the principal, or the supervisor that this is being filed against. So it's not like I want to file a grievance against Colleen and I give it to Terry.
Right.
So if I'm filing a grievance against Colleen, I'm going to give it to Colleen. So it's very prescriptive. It does say that for level 2, it must go to human resources. For level 3, for DGBA, it must go to the Board of Trustees, in this case, the Office of the Superintendent. So we're prescribing, we're telling where it needs to go. Even in the form itself, we made that change in one of the exhibits. That's why the exhibits is one of those items that is being taken up for approval by the board. And we do say, even made that addition on the form itself, that it must go to the principal or the director of the department.
Okay, thank you. And one more question.
Sure.
To Ms. Valdez's point, I know that this is a mutually agreed upon date, and that, can you explain a little bit about how we give notice? And it's not just through the mail, right, about that?
That is correct. One of the changes that we made was that we include electronic mail, where before it was not noted. So we're asking for read receipt of that.
Thank you.
And then again, the word mutually agreeable is very self-evident. I mean, I'm not going to say, Maria, I'm going to meet you for lunch today at Tago Cabana. If I don't hear from her, I'm not going to go to Tago Cabana, because mutually agreeable means that both of us have to agree on that. So nothing is going to be scheduled if both parties are not in agreement with the grievance hearing.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Trevino.
Thank you.
Let me clarify a few other things, if you could.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
We've had deadlines between 7 days, 10 days, 15 days, a bunch of different days. Now we're taking them all down to 10 days.
That is
correct. Making it very clear that there is a 10-day deadline to file on all the different complaints that we would want. And that includes both teachers, that includes students and parents, that includes community members as well, right? So we have 3 different sections where we've taken this down to 10 days to file for everybody, correct?
That is an excellent point. The previous grievance policies was very confusing for principals, for employees, for parents, because we would have to say, okay, is that DGBA? DBJ is 15 days from the beginning of the incident, while FNG is 10 days. No, that was 7 days. No, it's 10 days. Now it is consistent. It is 10 days at every step of the way for each of these 3 grievance processes. It makes it fail safe.
so that even if somebody is looking at the wrong section, they're still going to say, it's 10 days. They may be looking at the student section thinking that they're going to file an appeal as a community member, but they know that it's 10 days, correct?
I could not have said it better myself.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Anything else? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Trevino.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second, so all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Next item.
D, Campus Administration and Human Resources. 1, possible action regarding approval of employment contracts.
Dr. Newman.
Thank you, Vice President Grona. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the proposed recommendations for renewal of employment contracts. And once again, Mr. Joel Trevino is available should you have any questions. We ask for the board to approve this.
And these were submitted to us earlier, so everyone has had an opportunity to see that.
I appreciate the fact that they were electronic this year instead of the
Thank you.
stacks of paper. That was really nice. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Do we have a choice?
Yes.
Well, of
always
course.
have a choice, Mr. White.
Employees out here.
I think there's 59 pages, single-spaced
There are.
set of employees who are hoping, Mr. White, that you choose to approve the contracts.
I think we have confidence in Mr. Trevino that he's done his due diligence here.
Okay, on that note, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the proposed recommendations for renewal of employment contracts.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Thank you, Ms. Wolff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Next item.
2, possible action regarding 2015-2016 administrative training program.
Dr. Newman. Is it the Dr. Newman show tonight?
For just a little bit longer, yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mrs. Grona. I would like to ask Mr. Bill Boyd, our Executive Director of School Administration, to address this item.
Mrs. Grona, members of the board, Dr. Gottardy, members of the executive staff. This year we had 31 applications for the administrative training program. We interviewed 21 and we're bringing 16 names to you tonight to be approved so we can bring them forth in June to be introduced.
Thank you. Does anyone have any?
Do we have to approve them
All right. Yes, we have to approve them all. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the applicants selected for the 2015-2016 administrative training program as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Wolff. Do I have a second?
Second.
All Mr. Wheat. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes.
Thank
you, Mr. Boyd. Next item.
E, business services. 1, possible action regarding depository contract.
Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Madam Vice President, members of the board, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, and guests. Brian Moy, our Executive Director of Finance and Accounting, will be discussing this topic.
Madam Vice President, Board, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff. The Texas Education Code has very specific rules when it comes to school district depository contracts, and we are bringing you the form for approval to make our depository for the next 2 years, beginning July 1, Wells Fargo Bank. We had been with Bank of America probably since before I got with the district. And as you know, depository contracts, you can make an award after a request for proposals for 2 years, and you are allowed to do two-year extensions off that contract. And we were notified earlier in the spring by Bank of America that they were not likely to sign, or they weren't going to sign, the last 2-year agreement. We actually had one 2-year extension left. And they basically just said that it wasn't cost effective for them. So we went out for an RFP. We received 7 responses. We had a team of 7 people who went through each of the responses, binders about yay thick, and it came down to the top scorer was Wells Fargo, so we brought them in for an interview, made sure that they could provide the services needed, grilled them pretty hard, and we're satisfied that their services will at least match what we were receiving in our prior contract. Here today, if you have any questions, is Andy Deskin, Senior Vice President for Government Education and Nonprofit Banking with Wells Fargo, and George Pedraza, Director of Public Finance for Wells Fargo. Also, if you have any questions for me or our District Treasurer, Shannon Toborg, she was really the quarterback on this. All of the paperwork, coordinating all of the bids, coordinating all the bid reviewers. And so we're recommending that you approve the new depository contract.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments? Thank you for all of your work in preparing this for us. Okay, so do I have a motion?
I move that we select Wells Fargo Bank N.A. as the district's depository bank for the period beginning July 1, 2015 and ending June 30, 2017.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. White. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next item.
F, consent. 1, business services. A, budget amendment 5. B, Purchasing Solutions Alliance. C, bid items. D, $50,000 purchases. E, donations. 2, operations. A, Texel Middle School Central Energy Plant Chemical Water Treatment Contracted Services Bid Authorization. B, Hidden Forest Elementary School Drainage Improvement Project Construction Documents and Bid Delivery Method Approval. C, Professional Services Contracts, Construction Contracts, and related contract amendments supporting the district's maintenance and operations program requirements. 3, minutes from April 2015. 4, end of consent.
Thank you. Is there a board member wishing to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. White. There can be no discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Next item.
10, reports. A, financial statement, review of expenditures.
These reports have been provided for you. Next item.
11, matters from the floor.
Do I have to read it again?
Patsy Esterline.
Okay.
One more.
Okay. I'm not going to read it again, but you have 5 minutes during this portion of the meeting. And
Patsy Esterline.
thank you.
Good evening, Madam Vice President, board members, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, and guests. My name is Patsy Esterline, and I live at 6025 Meadows Sunrise, 78244. And I'm the president of the Northeast American Federation of Teachers. With the end of the 2014-2015 school year, I want to comment on the discipline procedures in this district. Recently, NEEA presented the results of their survey, and discipline was the #1 issue of concern from the teachers and staff. Each student has a paper copy or access to the computer copy of the NEISD Student Code of Conduct for the current school year. From the first paragraph of this document, it clearly states, quote, "Management strategies are designed to provide maximum support for instruction and on-task time for teachers and students. The major focus is on teaching and assisting students in developing skills of self-control that will result in increased academic achievement. The classroom management model provides both positive and predefined negative consequences for student behavior, end quote. I believe that the classroom management model they are referring to is CHAMPS. When this was introduced a few years ago, some campuses were told, just tell the students your expectations and they will rise to the occasion. And each classroom had CHAMPS posters for independent work, workstations, test center quizzes, direct teach, and transitions. Some schools even developed CHAMPS posters for the hallways and the cafeteria. And the teachers told the students their expectations until they were blue in the face. However, the staff was never trained on the predefined negative consequences that were part of the system. When a student didn't meet the class expectations, the teacher and/or team had to create their own. And these consequences differed by each team and/or teacher, so there was no consistency. Writing referrals became a waste of time because if the paperwork even came back, it usually stated, counseled with student. The behavior didn't improve. In fact, it usually escalated. When this new system was introduced, only part of the system was taught to the teachers and staff. This selective discipline process is destructive to the educational environment. When TEA announced that so many thousands of citations for inappropriate language had been issued in the 2013-2014 school year, the media had a field day. Radio announcers suggested that school districts now had a classroom-to-jail program. They just didn't interpret the information correctly. That actually meant that so many thousands of students throughout the state of Texas used inappropriate language that offended a teacher, a staff member, or an administrator. So enough is enough. Educators had the right to teach these students that they were going against accepted language in the school setting. Citations were issued and the students were fined for their cursing. However, this school year, the response from TEA was that students were not to be fined for cursing. Now the school hallways are filled with language that belongs in a locker room, not in an educational setting. Teachers throughout this district are expending their time and energy on up to 15% of disruptive students on their caseload, while the other 85% of their students wait patiently for their instructions to continue their education. A few years ago, that percentage was at 3 to 5%. However, each year it has consistently grown because the discipline system is broken. We must take time this summer to think outside the box. Some schools are proposing Saturday school for those students who are consistently tardy or truant. Now that is a true consequence. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next item.
12, board members' requests for items to be placed on next month's agenda.
Do I have a board member who wishes to have an item placed on next month's agenda? Next item.
13, discussion and possible action regarding board member requests for reports from the administration.
No action.
14, adjournment.
This meeting is adjourned and the time is 8:04.